still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications options. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright where the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us break. What time you said is coming over you. You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are, you are, you are. You fight back, it's an all-out attack. It feels like I've been taken on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. Oh, I've been looking forward to this one. Melly, good evening, welcome.
Well, thanks, mate. Yeah, I tell you what, that's the first time I've seen your intro for a long time. It's very good, that.
Oh, thank you, mate. Good to have you on, and great to see the Talking Turf is still ongoing, mate. You're an old hand at this podcast. Carry on now.
We are, but for recently we haven't really been doing a lot. You know, when the season's finished, I think we need to get into something like transfers or something like that. You know, I see you're still doing 7 shows a week. How you do that?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. It is absolutely mental. And even when I've been, rehearsing and doing the plays that I've been doing over the last couple of months, it's been absolutely mental. I've still managed to do it, and it's just variety. I mean, talking about Newcastle's easy for me. I've done it all my life, but talking about Newcastle with other people is even easier. So it's just one of them things, and I think because our club is just mental at times, and it is mental because the fans on social media make it mental a lot of the time. I think that's what makes it so easy, because you have so many moments where you're going, what on earth? It happens 365 days a year. There's a thirst for it, there's a knowledge for it, and I guess as well, after the season we've had, it's been positive. I've got to point this out, and I've waited 9 months to put this up, Melly, and I've showed you. You know what I'm going to show you. This was my prediction at the start of last season: Man City to win the league, Arsenal to come second, which I got right. Newcastle to finish third, wrong about that. Villa to finish fourth, wrong about that. Liverpool to finish fifth, Tottenham to finish sixth, and I put a Newcastle
prediction, really.
Newcastle to win their first domestic trophy since 1955. I said would be the FACup. Right now, I did get it right that they were going to win a trophy. I was confident in August that they were going to win a trophy. I was also confident that they would finish in the Champions League positions, which they did. So they finished third. They finished fifth, not third. I got Arsenal's position right. Yeah, the rest of it wrong. You were laughing, Melly. You were the first person to comment on that. Now, what were you actually laughing at? Bear in mind, Jamie Carragher's prediction for the Premier League was Man City first, Arsenal second, Liverpool third, Tottenham fourth. He had Manchester United as fifth and Aston Villa as sixth. What were you laughing at?
Well, that's not bad from Jimmy Carragher, to be fair, mate. But for you not to have Manchester United in there, I mean, this was a freak season. It was
Hold on. We finished above you last year.
You finished above it, but it didn't get you anything.
No, I didn't. But you weren't in the top six. But you weren't in the top six. So me not putting you in the top six was I didn't think that was unfair because you didn't finish in the top six the previous season. Neither did we. But you didn't. And I was confident we would because we didn't have Champions League football.
To be fair, right, what I thought was going to happen, because we won the FACup final that year, I thought that we were going to go out and recruit properly. It turns out we ended up recruiting from the Eredivisie, and it didn't work because they're used to like slower football. Good players, didn't get us wrong. Xerxes reminds us a lot of Joe Linton, Steve. He's not a forward, but he'll hold the ball up really well, and I think we'll end up getting a good player out of Xerxes. The others, they've took a little bit longer to gel and come together. It didn't work for Ten Hag, so they sacked him, and then that was the season rid off. I believe that Ruben Amorim was poached, and he said no originally, and then they've gone back and said, look, you can class this season as a write-off and just class it as a big pre-season. See who you want to keep and see who you want to get rid of. We didn't expect anything this season. We would like Champions League, obviously, because we're Manchester United, and that must come as a necessity to anybody who's going to take the job on. It didn't happen. It didn't work out. And I think now he's obviously in a very strong position, I think, because if we had won that Europa League, that would have been a cheat. I think we didn't deserve to be in the Champions League next year. We didn't deserve to win the Europa League, although we went unbeaten. And, we should have probably won it, but absolutely battered Spurs in the final. And now I'm going off line here, Miles. But what I'm trying to say is, you not putting Manchester United in that after the season they had before. Normally, Manchester United are a club that will have a bad season and bounce back. And I really, really expected them to be at least in the top four. You didn't have them in the top four, and that's what I was laughing at. I was thinking, are you crazy? Obviously, in hindsight, it was very clever. But I think we'll see a different Manchester United this season.
I mean, I remember us talking at the start of the season. I mean, I was saying to you that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, when he came in, was not your knight in shining armor. He was simply going to be a scapegoat for your owners. My opinion still hasn't changed. I'll take my hat off to him doing that Gary Neville interview, which I watched. I think it was at Christmas time, where he came out and he was answering Gary Neville's questions. And I think Gary Neville's a great pundit, by the way. I prefer him as a pundit than I did as an opposing player, because he was very good. But me personally, I listened to that interview and I thought, you know what? You haven't got a clue, mate. And I still say to this day that, the Glazers, and I see signs in your ground all the time, Glazers out, Glazers out, Glazers out. They're not bothered because they've put him in that position, and he comes out with a load of waffle at times, I feel. And I just think, if it wasn't for the fact that you're such a huge club, one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in the world, and I've said this on your podcast, and I don't mind saying it on here, because you are, and commercial revenue and everything that's gone before, will always have Man United for the foreseeable future being able to go out and splash money and splash cash. But I still think that putting that guy in charge and giving him the opportunity to buy into the club has been a clever plan by the Glazers, and I just can't see things getting better. I really can't for Man United.
I have to strongly disagree with you, Steve. I mean, I get your point, and I respect your opinion, but I think it's the complete opposite. I think the only way that Jim Ratcliffe was going to get in is if he promised these Glazers that, everything that he promised them. And look, I'll be the forefront. You'll not get any grief anymore. I'll take all the grief. Any decision that's made, the fans will attack me. And that's kind of giving you a clear run, to claim your dividends or do whatever you're doing. But ultimately, I think that was his feet under the table, and he's done exactly the same as what the Glazers did to get in. They originally bought a small percentage, and then over the years, they kept on adding to that percentage until they become the majority shareholder. And then they started putting all these rules and regulations in, which made the rest of the shareholders disappear. It wasn't worth them being in. They bought them out, and then they've got the majority and they own Manchester United. And I think Sergeant Ratcliffe has done exactly the same as what they did, but he's doing to them. Do you know that we turned a positive profit for the first time this month? And
you've cut lots of things, though. I mean, like, you've affected, like, he's taken away from those people who needed the money the most.
You're saying they need it the most, mate. Did they need it the most? You know, like, what he's doing is
I'm not talking about ex-legends here. I'm talking about people who worked at the club. He's made a lot of people redundant.
Yeah, but why did, you know, like, it was the same at Twitter. Elon Musk bought X and he came in, he went, right, they're not needed, they're not needed, they're not needed. And they're not needed. It's the same at Manchester United. They're overstaffed. You don't even need as many as what they've got. So he's came in and he's went, right, well, that's going to clear so much over 10 years. That'll save with millions. That'll save with millions. He's doing what was needed. The Glazers are sitting in America and they couldn't care less, mate. They're being advised by bankers in England. Bankers running football clubs. Like, it doesn't work, man. You need football men in charge of football clubs. And Jim Ratcliffe is a Manchester United fan. Despite what you might hear, he's a Manchester United fan. He wants what's best for Manchester United. Let's not forget that they're calling them. They went out and spent all that money. Maybe they spent it wrongly, but they spent the money and they backed the manager. And really, they should have done what Spurs done. And our Spurs are getting a lot of grief because the first manager to win a trophy in a lot of years got sacked. But that's what Man United should have done with Ten Hag if they were going to sack him, but they didn't. They backed them, and that was another mistake. They brought in players, and the players won Premier League proven, and they struggled, and we ended up in the predicament that we were in. That isn't happening now. That's not happening. Dan Ashworth came in from Newcastle, as you know. Wasn't hitting it off.
Worked out well, didn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Worked out well.
That's how you wanted it to be, really. You know, like, you wanted egg on his face, and he got egg on his face. He is making decisions that years ago, Dan Ashworth would have still been in the club in 2030. You know, like, making decisions that people didn't agree with. But Omar Barada's in there with Sergeant Ratcliffe, and he's saying, nah, this is not right. Something isn't right here. And they just got rid of him. That's it. He's gone. He's done. Now, Breslov, he's gone, and they've brought in Jason Wilcox, a proper So you've got football men at the core of Manchester United, which we haven't had for years, mate. Football men making football decisions. And I honestly, if you look at some of the targets that they're linked with the season, they used to do this years ago, Stephen. Remember, we took Andy Cole from Hughes, we took Berbatov from Tottenham, we took York from Villa. So we weakened their teams and we made them great players. They are great players, same as Kuna and Mbembo. You know, these type of players, they're going to come in, they're Premier League proven. They know how fast the Premier League is. They'll hit the ground running. Whereas before, we've relied on foreigners coming out. A lot of people play in the France League, in the Italian League, and in the Spanish League. Mate, let's not beat about the bush. There might be good leagues and there might be good teams who get to play football, but they're a lot slower than the Premier League. You haven't got 2 minutes on the ball as a left back in the Premier League because the right winger is on you instantly. You know, and that's where Manchester United struggled. They brought a load of these players in with a lot of players who were near the end of their career, and a couple of good players here and there, and they expected it to work. It was never, ever going to work. Never going to work. Whereas now, you bring these players in, mate, they're already Premier League proven. They know what it's about. They know what the project is. They know what his tactics is and how he wants to play. And I just think if we can bring a goalkeeper in, I think a goalkeeper is a necessity because although Nana makes really good saves, he doesn't do the basics right, mate. Like the basic football, and he lets in simple goals, and he dives when he should be like kicking it, and he kicks it when he should be diving, and it hasn't worked for him. So I think we need a goalkeeper, maybe a right back, a centre mid, and one or two goal scorers. If you add goals into Manchester United, right, that Man United that you've just watched this season who was so poor, if you go back over every single game, we had at least 2 or 3 opportunities in every single game that we lost to kill the game off. If Man United gone 2-0 up, it's a different game. If we can score a goal, it's a totally different game. You can put 10 men behind the ball and defend for your life if you want to do.
Haven't you got a centre forward in Rashford who was scoring lots of goals, but he suddenly seems to, have forgotten how to do that. He went to Villa. I don't agree with what people said about him going to Villa and really making an impression there. I don't think he made an impression. He didn't score that many goals. He played okay. He probably got a bit of his confidence back. But that's going to be a big elephant in the room, isn't it? Surely, because, if he's not going to fit Amarim's plan, and if Amarim doesn't see him as part of the jigsaw, you've got a big white elephant there because he's on ridiculous wages. How do you solve that problem?
I think they've cleared nearly £600,000 just with players who were like coming to the end of their contract.
Yeah,
So,
Ericsson's gone, hasn't he? They've got rid of, is it the full backs? Is Lindelof gone now?
Lindelof's gone, Ericsson, Evans.
Evans, that's...
I mean, you've still got Casemiro there who's on big wages, but Casemiro is a fine example of the kids that were playing football today, mate. He wasn't one of Morum's choices. He didn't like him and he didn't like what he stood for. He thought he was lazy and he told them that. But instead of taking to X or going to nightclubs like Rashford, it was announced that Morum was the new manager. Jesus, it's absolutely beaming in here. It was announced that Morum was the manager, and he went to Ireland, mate, on the drink. You know, like instead of being at the training ground waiting for the new manager coming in and greeting him, he was sitting in Ireland on the drink all night. You know, like in the middle of a season. That is the type of player that you do not want. Him, Sancho. I mean, Anthony struggled, but he's went to Spain and he's done well. So,
yeah.
I think he'll probably leave as well. Garnacho is another one. Every time he has a bad game or he's subbed or he's on the bench, his brother's on X and Instagram slating the club. And, you know, that's not what you want. That is not what you want. The good thing about Newcastle is you never see that. I don't think I've ever seen a post where a player has done that, ever. And that's what you need. You need a togetherness at the club, mate. And Manchester United haven't got it. They're all individuals. They all want to be superstars. They want to score that goal that's going to go on to TikTok and like get 1 million views or 10 million views. They want that. That's what they want. That's what they're looking for every single time that they're going forward. Manchester United, they're so predictable to play against. They'll go down the wing, they'll pop back. They'll go down the wing, they'll pop back, they'll put it in the box. And it's easy to defend. Anybody can defend against that. But that's because they're looking for that one opportunity to score that super goal, to be the superstar. So that like they become famous. The reason Bruno Fernandes has got stats as good as he has, mate, is because he tries every single time. Every ball, he'll try one of these balls. So if you get 1 out of 10, but you're doing 100 of them a game, of course your stats is going to be good. I'm pleased he stayed and showed loyalty to the club. But would I have been disappointed if he had left? I wouldn't have blamed him because, you know, like I think if you put him in a team where he's not trying to play a right back, centre back, left mid, right mid, centre forward, and he's just free to be like Kevin De Bruyne is at City, I think you'll see a totally different player. So he would have been a miss in Manchester United, but I think it would maybe would have helped as well, because a prime example, Steve, is Mbappe and Neymar and Messi at PSG, superstars. You know, like they think that the whole club's about them and this
individuals.
Aye, and then they leave in PSG, and Enrique, the recruit, and they just get runners and people who want to play for the badge. And honestly, mate, that's the best final I have ever watched. They absolutely destroyed Inter Milan. I didn't care if that was Inter Milan or Barcelona that night. I think that was PSG's night, and it was written, you know, like it was their night, and they're absolutely brilliant. And that's getting rid of personalities, you know, like.
It just, I agree with you. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I agree. I think ultimately, you know, and money doesn't always buy success. Just look at Newcastle United. You know, that's if we count this small window that it's literally just closed tonight as we pre-record this on Tuesday, that'll be 4 windows that Newcastle haven't bought anybody in. Yeah, okay, it's three and a bit, but Newcastle still went on and won the first domestic trophy. You know, since 1955. You know, the first trophy since '69. So, you know, what have you made of Newcastle season, Melly? Because you know, Newcastle, of course, the season before didn't qualify for Europe, missed out. You know, in those last couple of games, missed out on a European place. I think we said at the start of the season that probably wouldn't be a bad thing because it meant Newcastle could sit back and, you know, concentrate on the cups. They did that. They won the League Cup at the second time of asking, and they did it the hard way. You know, we went on a hell of a run. We got, you know, difficult draws, and we got Chelsea, we got Forest, and we got Arsenal. I mean, 3 teams that, you know, we're all above you this season, and we're all chasing Champions League. So basically, it was a hard run, Melly, and getting Arsenal in the semi-final was a tough game because Arsenal, you know,
a bad run of form though, weren't they, at the point?
We won a cup, mate. We won a cup.
You won a cup.
What did you think? What did you make of it?
if I'm being totally honest, Steve, at one point of the season, I'm sure you've seen the tweets as well as I've seen the tweets. Like there was a lot of people asking for Eddie out, and
Not
then
me.
no, but there was a lot. I mean, I've had to I'm in a group, like with Dobie and whatnot, and there was quite a few of them in there that said what's he doing? This is absolutely ridiculous. He's playing the same people every week. Every manager knows when he's gonna make subs and who the subs is gonna be. And then mate, you went away and you had that run, and you couldn't get beat. You were winning 1-0, 2-1, scraping through games. But then what happens is when you scrape through the games and you get the wins, the belief comes, and then the belief's in the dressing room that you just kind of get beat. And that was it, like normally at Christmas, you'll have a bad run or just after Christmas. You didn't. You continued. You were picking draws up away from home. You were winning. You were picking points up. So I think you've had a really good season for the team that you've got. I'm not going to lie. But you didn't have any Europe. You had a week's rest between every week, apart from if there's cup games. And that's why you were able to do what you did. Now you've got the Champions League to contend with. Obviously, you're the Carabao Cup winners. You've got that to defend. So that'll mean something. You'll not be able to play the kids in the early rounds because, the fans and the manager.
We won't be in the early rounds because we're in the Champions League. You'll be in the early rounds, of course.
No. Wait, round 3. Yeah?
It's an early round.
Hey, the more games, the merrier for me. We need them. But that's what we've got. So we'll reverse roles. So it'll be interesting to see how the season turns out. I think it's a worry that you haven't bought anybody. I mean, Callum Wilson's due to re-sign his contract. I heard that.
Allegedly.
And I did see something last night. I don't know how far it's true that you're potentially going to go for Jacob Ramsey. Now that would be an absolutely fantastic signing, Steve.
For me, right, I wouldn't believe anything you read in the papers. I think Newcastle's signings will come at some point. I don't think this window was ever going to be the aim for Newcastle, bringing in big name players. And I think, generally speaking, I think there's been a power battle since Mitchell came in. I don't think Eddie Howe's been happy with the appointment of Mitchell. I think there's been a frosty relationship. I think there's been a relationship of some sort. I hope they get that sorted out. But I think for most Newcastle fans who are sitting watching at the sidelines, I think, if it's down to Steve Nixon, who's the head scout, nothing's changed there, and Eddie Howe recruitment, a recruitment drive from them this summer, and they get a chance to spend some money. Yeah, it's going to be on their heads, but I would trust them because they were the ones who brought in those original signings, your Trippiers, your Dan Burns, your Nick Popes, the ones that kept us in the Premier League. So for me, I'm confident that they'll make the right decisions. The key really for us is getting Champions League does gives us an advantage to a degree. I still do feel that a lot of people don't like to move north. I still think there's this kind of the wives don't want to move north, and I still think money plays a big part. I still think that because, as I mentioned at the top of the program, we aren't as commercially successful as some of the other clubs who you would consider top clubs in the country and in the Premier League. We can't compete with those clubs' wages, and our wage structure will always be something that hampers us as well as the PSR. So I think that a Brian Mbeumo, for example, who may fancy a move to Newcastle, may want to come to Newcastle and play in the Champions League, it's a non-starter because he wants to, quadruple his wages, if you believe what the papers say. He wants more money, which is understandable. It's a short career. He's 25. He's still got these best years ahead of him, you would think, but he's going to want paying for that. And if he wants 150 grand to 250 grand a week, he's not going to get that at Newcastle because if they pay him it, then the wage structure has to be altered and everybody else has to be paid accordingly. There's going to have to be a time when Newcastle change that kind of wage structure, but that won't come until they've got the commercial revenue. That won't come until we've got a stadium sponsor, a kit sponsor. And I still feel that, our inactivity on that's a bit concerning for me. And that doesn't come down to PIF. Surely that comes down to the people who are put in that position. At the moment, it's Silverstone. He's the man who is in charge of bringing in sponsorship. He's brought in some pretty good sponsorships, better sponsorships than we've ever had in recent years, but not enough, So there's a lot going on at Newcastle at the moment. Talk of a new stadium, of course. If we get another 10, 15, 20,000 on our stadium. We'll build a new stadium. That's going to help the commercial revenue with more corporate facilities, more boxes. But all of that's going to take time. So it's not going to happen overnight. So this particular transfer window, and this is I'm going around the houses again, but you're saying about Newcastle, recruitment, etc. I think we'll sign players this window. I mean, again, as we're pre-recording this on Tuesday, Newcastle heavily linked again with James Trafford. Trafford making all the right noises, saying he wants to come to Newcastle. Chelsea sniffing around, but it sounds as if Trafford will be the keeper that Newcastle bring in to compete with Nick Pope. The most concerning thing for me is that we still, at this moment in time, don't seem to be linked with any forward. I think we all feel as fans that would like to see somebody come in and be able to either play with or play instead of Isak, because Callum Wilson can't do it anymore. I think we also feel that a right winger, as somebody who can either play instead of Murphy or be his backup to Murphy, is very important. We've signed the young Spanish lad Cordero. He's a right winger, but he's going to go out on loan. And I also think most fans feel that we do need to start strengthening our back four as well, because Shaw's not going to go on forever. I think Dan Burn could get another season or two out of him. He's 32, 33. But Botman, there's still big question marks over Botman's fitness. Is Botman somebody who we can rely on next season with such a heavy schedule with Champions League? So your worries and my worries are exactly the same. I do think Newcastle are almost going to be back in the same position as they were this time 2 seasons ago when we had the Champions League. It's a great adventure. It's great. It's great to be in it. Financial implications are fantastic. There's 8 guaranteed games, so Newcastle their commercial revenue is going to be boosted by that. But we don't want to be, turning up and, next season and not being able to compete because we haven't got the players and we're still relying on Callum Wilson, Sean Longstaff, because he's a local lad. It's crazy if that's going to be the situation. But I don't think it will be, Melly. I think we'll sign players. Do you still feel confident as a Man U fan that without Champions League, the name Man United and the fact that it's such a huge club is still going to be a big pulling factor for these players? So when Newcastle and Man United are linked with Mbeumo, we know Newcastle probably can't match you for wages. But you'd like to think some of these players, not necessarily Mbeumo, would go, I fancy the Champions League. Newcastle's won a trophy. They're a club on the up. I'd like to go and play for Eddie Howe. I'd probably get a regular game. Do you still feel that Man United, especially with Amorim seems to be, I don't know, it's the first 6 games are pivotal for him, for me next season. If you get off to a bad start, I think he'll go. But are you still confident that you can bring players in this window?
I think Man United will always bring players in, mate. That's it's proven, like with who they're linked with. Like Mbeumo was choosing Man United over Champions League football. Kuna wanted Man United. He could have went to a Champions League club, but they're buying into Amorim's project. So I don't worry on that side of it. The worrying thing is the money and the debt and whatever else, But I think they'll always be able to bring players in. It's bringing the right players in. Like you're on about Mbeumo. For me personally, as a player, I think what they make as money is enough. Whether it's 60 grand a week or 600 grand a week, they should go somewhere where they're gonna become a legend.
Well, that should be the aim.
Where the fans will adore them, because how much money do you need? I think agents have a lot to do with what players now in their clubs and stuff, and I think they're a big influence on players. But for me personally, if I made it as a footballer, I know firsthand that I would if I was in Mbeumo, I would go to Newcastle, not because they've got Champions League, but you look at the team and you see the togetherness, and you look at Man United and you see that they're all over the shop, and players is calling the club here and calling the club there. And you would look at who's more stable and where you're going to make more effect. Mm-hmm. But like you said before, I think a lot of the wives and whatnot, they don't want to come up here. The money might not be as good. It's portrayed as it's freezing up there. And to Londoners, the North End's at Manchester, they forget about Newcastle. The crack with the acting and stuff. We didn't exist. To Southerners. It's just, and that's the sad fact about it. So you've got to be careful, haven't you, Steve? You've got the Champions League and you've got a bid pull, but do you really want players just to come because you're in the Champions League?
Oh, no,
Nah,
definitely not.
you didn't. So I think the key, mate, and I've said this all along, is youth. If you get your youth system right, look at Southampton, right? They had to be a selling club, right? But they have produced some talent over the years. Some players that have gone on to win Premier Leagues, like Champions Leagues, like Ballon d'Ors in
Yeah.
Southampton. And that's because they got the foundation right. If you get your foundation right, because I'm telling you now, honestly, mate, hand on me heart, you don't do half as much as what you should be doing in the Northeast.
Agree.
Everybody, and it doesn't matter who you ask, you can ask the most, loyal Newcastle fan, they'll still tell you that Sunderland have got a better academy than Newcastle. So I think you need to get that right. First and foremost, get your academies right. That's the headmaster at our school, Mr. Hodgson, Kevin. He runs the under 16s, like East North when you got to play for your county when you were younger. He runs that for Newcastle, like in that area. And he went and played a team from Liverpool, where Grimsby or something, and he turned up, and there was he had 2 players in his team that were played for the academy locally, right? He went and played a team, and he said there was only 1 or 2 players in that team that weren't connected to the club, whether it was a professional club, whether it was Liverpool, Grimsby, Everton. They were all connected to the club, playing professional, well, semi-professional football, let's say. And he absolutely battered them 7-1. With players that cannot get picked up. So if they're living down there, they're playing professionally, mate. They're in a professional setup. But because they're living in the Northeast, they're not getting the chance. So I think Newcastle, first and foremost, need to get that right. You could be sitting with the next Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale went to Real Madrid, mate. He ended up being an international superstar. Won Ballon d'Ors, Champions Leagues, La Ligas, you name it. And that's because Southampton got that core right, and they made a lot of money off that, Steve. You haven't got to keep every single one. You get some of them coming through, you give them a season or 2 in the Premier League. Big clubs come in, give you 67 million, your PSR's gone through the roof, mate. Get the core right, and the future will be all right. But if if you're wanting to buy superstars and bring them in, then you're gonna end up like Man United have, mate.
Yeah, and I mean, Newcastle went through this kind of scenario back in the 90s when we were competing briefly with Man United to win the Premier League. And then we ended up being that team who, then started buying has-beens from other clubs, so we were buying cast-offs from Man United, from Chelsea, and that was when Newcastle's downward spiral happened. Shepherd and Hall went out, Ashley came in, and the rest's history. So, yeah, I don't think Newcastle will change massively what they're doing. And I do think they are investing in youth. But I think the links with local football is diabolical. And I think that's where Newcastle need to improve. They need to get in touch with the likes of Wallsend and Redhoof. And, those are 2 big clubs, one on either side of the Tyne, Ellington Juniors. Get in touch with clubs, though. And that's where you find a little nugget which you can dust off and you can bring through. And yeah, I agree massively, mate. 100%. I massively agree. So looking at the rest of the season, I mean, you mentioned the final, which Spurs won. You feel it would have been an embarrassment to get in the Champions League that way, but Spurs won. Were you surprised to see Ange Postecoglou get the sack? I mean, he put all his eggs in one basket, and I mean, fair play to the bloke. It was a hell of a gamble to say, and I love the little montage they did where he's going, "I always win a trophy in 2 years." No, it was very, very good. He mentioned it countless times, and he did win a trophy for them, but it wasn't good enough for Levy. And I guess he just suffered because of La Ligue position, didn't he?
I think they had a really bad season, and I think the decision was made before the UEFA Cup final, mate. I think they'd already decided that they were going to part ways. It just wasn't good enough. Well, at least Daniel Levy didn't think it was good enough. The players seem to love Ange. I loved Ange. I think he talks really honestly. He's transparent. He's straight down the line. What you see is what you get. And, it must be hard to be a manager in the Premier. I keep saying this, and I know the money that they get, and people say you should put up with it. But the amount of grief, when, it's like a form of bullying, isn't it? When they get a reaction from somebody, they just pile it on and they make it worse, and they make a situation seem a lot. How can you manage that? Imagine a day-to-day job, mate, and somebody's constantly coming in every day saying, you're rubbish. You're rubbish at this, and then other people come in. You're not very good at this, are you? You know, like, it's not a very good job. That, of course, it's going to put you off. You know, like, it isn't going to help at all. But he still went out. You know what it is? They won that cup final before the ball was even kicked. You know, their announcer, because what they did is they brought each announcer from each stadium. So you had Spurs there, and Spurs' announcer was geeing them up, and then they would start. And then United's announcer, Keegan, he would start with us, you know. And the Spurs man absolutely nailed it, mate. They were absolutely bouncing. The flags that they were giving, you know, like they had to do is to dare is to do on the back. And the first 5-10 minutes, I'm sitting watching it, and I says to my son, I says, we've got this. Spurs don't fancy this. They're just, you know, like, they're not interested. And then just typical Man United, they let them creep back into the game slowly but surely. And then, I mean, that goal, mate, that goal to decide a Europa League final is embarrassing. That could have quite easily been titled a relegation playoff. And watching the game, you would think, it definitely is a relegation playoff. It was terrible. We could have played for another 2 weeks and not scored. I never felt like we were going to score after the first 10 minutes. You know, like, it just, there was no buzz about the fans. Half time, I know the goal came before half time, but even before that, there was nothing. You know, like, people were trying to get the fact, it just wasn't working. And, you know, I'm not pleased because ultimately I would, you know, the Champions League would have been great, you know, Champions League football, but I think it's done me a massive, huge favour. And I said this, I was on 5 Live. They kept ringing us every week while we were in the Europa League. And I remember where Leon was coming up, and the guy jumps on and he says, we've got Melly from the Talking Turf podcast. Massive game for you tonight. But they were bigging it up. And I said, you know what? It is a big game, but it isn't the be all and end all if we get beat tonight and go out. And he couldn't believe what I said. And I thought, they're not going to invite me back on. That doesn't hang with what they were looking for. But I meant what I said. Like, and you'll see this season. You've seen this season. You went and won a trophy. You finished in the Champions League. Your squad wasn't really big. You need to improve your squad next season. You need more numbers in there and bodies that you can bring on, and that's not going to make a difference. You're not going to really tell the difference in quality. And Manchester United did that. They were playing Thursdays, Sundays, every week. Thursday, Sunday, 2 days to train, flying out of another country, 1 day to train, flying out of a different country. And it was taking a toll on what was already a poor squad, a really poor squad. And that, you could tell, mate, come Christmas, they were knackered. They were honestly, and you were watching them play and you were thinking, honestly, I've seen better when I went to watch Ashington and Blythe Spartans and stuff play. Honestly, like, they couldn't get 3 or 4 passes string together. That's how embarrassing it was getting. And I was thinking, these are getting paid 300 grand a week to play this kind of football. Me and Gary was standing often at Wharfside, waiting on the tube, mostly like absolutely pouring down the rain, looking at each other going, what on earth are we doing? Like, I run a kids' football team and I miss quite a lot. Luckily, I've got a coach who helps us, who's really good. But I was missing the kids' football for that. And I was thinking, I was questioning my lightly, you know, and I was saying, it's actually embarrassing. It's really embarrassing, you know. We'll see how it goes next season, Steve. But I think we'll have a bad season, and if you didn't recruit, I think you need a good 6 players, to be honest with you. And if you didn't get that, then I think you'll struggle in the league.
Yeah. What about the FA Cup? I mean, you know, that was an interesting game, wasn't it? And Crystal Palace won.
Crystal Palace over the moon for them, mate, to be fair. But apparently, have you seen that? It's been questioned whether they can actually get into the Europa League, because the 2 owners, one owns a club that's in the Conference League and one owns a club that's in the, is it Europa? I think
that's right.
So it's not allowed. It's not allowed. You're not allowed to own 2 clubs in the same competition. So I think there's a big case there.
Forest have put a letter in already, haven't they? Forest have put a letter in.
Is it Forest that would get the players?
They would benefit, I think.
Aye. Well, you know, it is what it is. The rules is there for all to see, and you know, like it shouldn't be like you say the cartel. I get away with it all the time. It's, you know, rules is rules. We'll see what comes of that. Like,
Is it better for football? Is it better for football that we've seen? You know, Liverpool's won the league. I know that wouldn't have gone down well with you, but Newcastle's won the League Cup. You know, Palace has won that. Spurs obviously beat you in the final, but it could have been you. You could have won it. Is it better for football in general when you see, a variety of teams have won stuff this year? Yeah, you do feel like that.
Definitely. Apart from Liverpool, obviously. I mean, I know that's only their second Premier League, so they've still got 11 to catch up on with us. But I get some grief for that as well. But I just wind them up. It is, man. That's what football's about, isn't it? And that's why I love football. You want these teams to be winning. And I tell you what else, you've got Wrexham flying through the leagues. It would be great if they get up into the Premier League and start, competing. And I know, like, you might not agree with that because of the cartoon behind it, like with Reynolds and.
I don't mind Wrexham. I don't mind Wrexham at all.
No, I think that's a fairy tale. I just, Leicester won the league. Anybody's seen that coming? And I honestly thought at one point, had you not had a bad start, because Liverpool totally dropped off at the beginning, at the end, sorry, if you hadn't had that sticky, it could have been your year. Nobody else challenged them. You could have potentially been challenging for that time. I don't think you'll do it next year, but I think this year could have been that year, Steve, had you not gotten off to that bad, 2 months, was it?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, we had a bad start. I mean, we played when we were playing well in games, we weren't getting the results, and when we were playing badly, we were scraping results. We had started the season, but yeah, I'm not going to complain. It was the best season of my lifetime, no doubt about it. And hopefully there's going to be more ahead. Sunderland coming up
in your lifetime.
100% because we won a trophy. Yeah, and right. I mean, listen, it's a trophy. I never thought I'd see us win anything, Melly. And no football supporter has the divine right to see their club win a trophy. I think anybody who says that, you're being a bit arrogant. Well, you're certainly disrespecting the other 91 clubs that are in the leagues. For me, at the end of the day, you have to earn the right to win a trophy, and Newcastle earned the right because they beat everybody who was put in front of them. And we've got a whole history of banana skins in cup games where we've lost. You mentioned Wimbledon. We've been knocked out of cups by Wimbledon in the past. So, every single win was an important one because it led to that place in the final. And Liverpool, yeah, some might say that because they got knocked out of the Champions League, we played them at the right time and we still had to go and beat them. It's that psychological thing. We should have done the same to Man United, but I still think we choked against Man United when we played you. You scored, and we never looked like scoring. We just, fair enough. Man United won that.
A different animal when they play.
We learned from that. We learned from that cup final. We didn't have a hotel outside the ground. There was loads of little things that Eddie changed that he said had affected him first time round, and that's a positive. From my perspective, listen, I'm happy here, but it is my best season, and that's because we won something, Melly.
Aye, fair enough, mate. It is. I know it's the Carabao Cup, but it's a start, isn't it? Now,
Yeah, 100%. And I can understand people laughing because it's the Carabao Cup, etc. But look, it's
it is what it is.
It is, of course, it is. Sunderland have come up. That's great for us. We've got the derby back. Could you believe it? And I mean, can you see? I mean, you like me. You've got Mackham mates that you'll know. Can you see them staying up anything more than that one season?
Nah, if I'm being realistic, I cannot see them staying up. I think the gap's too big, isn't it, between it, like Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton found out this year, like Luton found out the year before. The gap's massive, and I didn't think Sunderland's got a big enough squad. And I didn't think, if they're being honest with you, they expected to come up this year. The team isn't ready for the Premier League. They're getting that cash injection. They played the playoff final, a lot of money for that. They're getting a lot of money for Joby Bellingham. I think if his surname is anything other, he's playing for
£32 million.
Honestly, I'd even get that. But you take it. So they've had a lot of money in that club. If they can recruit properly and get some Premier, because Nottingham Forest did it. You mentioned before Newcastle used to take all the cast off. Forest did. They took Wood, Elanga. Gibbs White's an exception. That's quite a few, and they did well, mate. They choked at the end, but they did well. So it can be done, and there is a lot of players out there like that now, ready to go into the new club. So if Sunderland can get a few of them, I think Jordan Henderson coming back would be good. I think Pickford even, like in nets, although they've got a canny goalkeeper. Harry Kane's just scored for England 1-0, by the way. So if they can recruit, yes, I like the manager. I think they've got a couple of good players. They've got 6 points off you, obviously, to start with, because you haven't beat them since what? 2011 in the
Beat them in
league?
the FACup, mate.
In the league, sorry.
1-1 draw last game. Mitrovic scored.
Right. It's good. It's good. That's what you want, isn't it? You want your derby back. You didn't.
It's 6 points for us anyway.
Me, Sunderland, no Newcastle fan thought they would have the derby back next year, but they've got it. And all the horses are flying all over. Absolutely cracking myself.
So what are you thinking for next season? You genuinely feel in your heart of hearts that Amarim is going to get it right and turn this club around that you call Manchester United?
Yes, I do. I think he's the right man for the job. He reminds us a bit of Ange Postecoglou. He's honest, sometimes too honest. I think he's got the players backing. He kind of gnaws a rat when he sees one and he's getting rid of them. So he's getting rid of that poison from the club. And then I think he'll bring players in who are buying into the into his system and into the project. Like, he hasn't got the Champions League. So now he knows if they do want to join, then it's for the right reasons. They're not joining. Maybe it's still the Manchester United factor, but they're not joining for European football or Champions League football. He said, like, we were heavily linked with Gyökeres, and Moran came out and said something about the Champions League, that he wasn't, like, we'll see if he gets Champions League. And he says, I don't want anybody here that is only going to come for Champions League football. So his morals is right. And I think he's got the right people above him now. So I am optimistic. But on the other hand, I'm the same as you, like, managers didn't get time nowadays, Steve. So you're 6 or 8 games in and you've only picked up 2 or 3 points. Then the heat's on, mate. The heat is on. You've got a lot of fans, in the fan base who, I didn't want Ten Hag sacked, I'll be honest with you. I know I said before that they should have sacked him then, but that was like...
Yeah, you're a supporter.
I was referring as an owner, like, if they were going to sack him after 8 weeks, then they should have sacked him then, like, they shouldn't have wasted the money and backed the manager to then sack him. I think that was stupid. I'm a believer in you should keep the same manager. I think Ten Hag was a good man. I think he'll do well at Bayer Leverkusen. He did well at Ajax. I think Man United is a club that is, like, you gone there lately, or especially in that era, and you end up worse. It doesn't matter if you're a manager, a director, a player, or a canteen staff. It's just not a nice place to be in. I think Jim Ratcliffe's come in, and although he's done what he's done, he's set out rules and regulations, and this is the way to behave as a Man United fan, Man United member of staff, player. This is how you act. I think Amorim's adopting that, and I've got a good feeling. Well, not, like, I think we'll get into the top 4, and I think we'll win the league by the end of this decade, definitely.
Okay, interesting prediction. Going to talk about England. You mentioned it. Obviously, we're pre-recording this, and Harry Kane had just scored whilst we were talking. But I'm in England. I'm not as a huge an England fan as I was back in the day. I don't watch it religiously, and I find something else to do usually when England's on. Tuchel's come in, though. I do pay attention to the squad selection and who's in, and I'll watch them in the big tournaments. Tuchel's come in. He's on a hiding and nothing already, Melly, isn't he?
You know what? Without sounding really rude, I can never understand why they've gone down the German coach route. I think there's enough good managers. I don't think... Can you see Germany ever hire an English coach?
No, I can't. I mean, and that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't be judged on where you're from. You should be judged on your ability. And he's a good manager. Our media in this country is already making it impossible for him. It really is. They'll have him. Give him another couple of bad results. They'll have him in lederhosen and on the front page of the red tops, and they'll be taking the mick out of him. This is the way it goes. This is what happens. It's a hard job being England manager. You think it should be the easiest. But I feel for the guy already, because he's a nice enough guy, but I just think he's up against it straight away. And the Andorra result the other night wouldn't have done him any credit, because getting a 1-0 win against Andorra is pitiful.
I'm just very patriotic. I believe that the English manager should be English. Like, you've got Eddie Howe sitting there, very good manager. He was really close to gone. That would have been a good appointment. You've got Graham, West Ham manager, Potter.
Oh, yes, Potter, yeah.
Another good manager. Steve, look, You've got the creme of the creme, man. You've got the choice of the best players. You know, like when you look at some of the managers, what they've had, all this, you know, Gareth Southgate, you know, lovely guy, but he had the best of the best. And any other manager, I firmly believe that we are World Cup and Euro winners. They get to the final, mate, and they sit back. They think a goal's going to be enough, and they sit back and they defend. You've got at that time you had like Foden, Grealish in their prime, Harry Kane in his prime. If you attack, the best form of defense is attack, is it not? And that's what you need. You know, like Newcastle's a great example. I'm sure I've said this to you before. Last season or the season before, you played City, you were 2-0 up at half time. You get in at half time, you come out and you try and sit behind the ball. That's exactly what attacking teams want you to do. When they start attacking from the front, you didn't know what to do and you ended up losing the game 4-2.
Yeah.
If you continued the way you did in the first half, where you pressed them and you got at them, they didn't like it. That didn't allow them to attack. So you absolutely battered them. You were 2-0 up and you were strolling. It's the same with England. They've got some of the excellent players. Why would you want to restrain them and get them to defend? Just get them to attack, score again and again, and then the game's over. You know, like I've never understood it. You've got, like I say, you've got the creme of the creme to choose from. Like, it's not like Newcastle or Man United where you've got to really, like, please, can we buy him? We really need him. You know, like, he's a good left winger. You can just go and pick the best British left winger up and say, right, you're in the England squad. Best right, you're in. How many goals you scored? 40, 50. You're in. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Never understood it.
I think there's a bit of fatigue as well. I do think now that some of these players, especially the ones that have been selected for England, they're obviously going to be the best players. They're going to be the players that have played the most games. You know, some of them have been all the way to the Champions League, quarterfinals, semi-finals, final. You know, whatever. You know, this is what happens season in, season out. And these players they need a rest. You know, there is. You know, we joke on about, you know, players back in the 50s and 60s, you know, would have played 6-7 games a week, but it's a different game now. And that's the problem, I think. I think half of them are fatigued. They need a bit of a break. I think that's half the problem, Melly, you know.
They'll not get that, mate.
No, they won't.
You know, they're in the wrong job if that's what they want.
Yeah.
These guys are training 7 days a week. You know, like if you're not in gym fanatics, you know, they'll be at the gym 7 days a week and they're just fit and they're strong and, you know, they can keep going because their body's used to it. So, you know, they should be able to do it. But I agree with you. You know, like these games now, the season's only been over, 12 days? You know, although it feels like 12 months, like, because honestly, I'm lost without it. Like,
yeah, I know. I'm the same, mate. I am the same, 100%.
But I think like June should just be a no-go. You know, like knee football in June. And then you've got July to then start building them back in, getting ready for the season, play internationals then, you know, like, why not? They were literally playing. Man United flew out the day after they played Aston Villa. You know,
got bit of a team that had only won one game in their history.
Aye, but they've got 10 million, so, you know, you can take it. Listen, let me just quickly mention that, because I can see the time rocking on a bit, but your Ferrara in Manchester United is dead now, like.
Well, what, sorry?
I cannot believe, right? Like, all you had to do was beat Everton, and then you didn't have anybody to thank, right? But you couldn't even beat little Everton. You had to rely on the mighty Manchester United to pull it out of the bag to get your Champions League football. I was sitting in Old Trafford, right? And I've never wanted an opposition team to score as much, right? And then we scored, and I thought, actually, you know what? This will be great if Newcastle do and win, and we bail them out, because then they've only got Champions League football because of us, and I've been getting pelters, and I mean pelters, big rock.
You tried off me, but I didn't bite. I was on holiday.
I've been getting big rocks. Like, that's 38 games in a season. There's no way, like, you know. But I says, no. Forget about the 38 games and how many points. It came down to that one game. Did it not? If we didn't beat Aston Villa, you were playing conference football because Palace won the FACup. You were in the conference.
The way I look at it is, it's down to the very last point that Newcastle got. If we hadn't got that last point that we got, we wouldn't have been above. Them. So it comes down to the last point that you got on the board. That's what it comes down to. It
comes down to Manchester United beating Aston Villa.
I actually celebrated with a Man United fan. He didn't realise he was with a Newcastle fan. They were sitting together, and in this bar, And when it came through, they were qualified for the Champions League. I said, "Give us a hug, lads!" I jumped up and down, and then the Man United fan, after 10 seconds, realised why I was celebrating and was like, "Oh, get off, get off!" Well, I knew you were trying to get us with that just before we're finished, Melly. So I thought I'd keep a couple of these for you. Man United have said they'll not sell Garnacho to one of their rivals. So that rules out Leeds United, Burnley, Sunderland, and Tottenham. And Paddy Power, Man United have reached an agreement with Brian Mbeumo to ruin his promising career under 2 years. That's from Paddy Power. And this one, Ruben Amorim has promised to Manchester United directors in a private meeting to bring European football to Old Trafford next season. He aims to have TNT Sport installed by August in time for the new season. Hey, Melly.
I'll tell you what I seen the other day, and I thought it was brilliant. But about Mbeumo, you know, the Nottingham Forest manager.
Yeah.
Brian Mbeumo after 2 years at Man United. Boy, that was brilliant. Absolutely cool.
Well, Melly, I'm glad you came on. It's always good to get you on, mate. And Talking Turf, people can still tune in. Get over to subscribe on YouTube. It's always well worth popping over to see Gary and Melly chatting about Manchester United.
We're trying not to talk about Man United as much, Steve, now, because we realise that you know it's most of our audience is in the northeast. Well, just honest though, you know, we get carried away like I have on here, but you know, we'll try and keep it like, you know.
Yeah. You keep it civil, mate. You keep it civil. Great, mate, as always, to have you on. We'll get you back on at the start of next season. I'll be jumping over onto Melly's in July sometime when him and Gary get themselves sorted and get another show up. But Melly, anything else you want to say before you finish?
Yes, just a quick prediction for next year. I think Manchester City will end up coming back stronger. They'll win the league. And then I think it'll be Arsenal again, Manchester United, Liverpool. I'm going to stop there.
We'll see. We'll have a prediction. I'll let you get. Well, let's get the transfer window well and truly open, the proper one, and let's see who gets what, and let's see who goes. And then when it comes towards August, just maybe it's the 1st of August, round about then, we'll get together, mate, on here, and we'll chew the fat, and we'll make our proper predictions again. Look forward to it, mate. Take care.
Thanks for getting us on. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk.